2000s beats in the style of the Neptunes and Timbaland are in high demand right now, as is evident by the crazy numbers Dark Thoughts by Lil Tecca is putting up. So it's incredibly important for you as a producer to know how to make beats in these styles. So today I'm going over quite literally everything you need to know to make Pharrell/Neptunes type beats similar to Lil Tecca's Dark Thoughts. And this includes which VSTs you should be using, the chord progression used in Dark Thoughts, melody layering, as well as how to throw down a groovy bass line, and most importantly, the drums. So stick around till the end of the video, and I recommend following along in your DAW as well, as there is a lot to learn from this tutorial. But with that being said, the first thing that we're going to get into is which VSTs you should use. And quite literally, for every single melodic sound in this beat, I'm using the GOAT, Xenology. Xenology is honestly perfect for these kind of beats, because it has these quote-unquote live instrument sounds, but they don't sound super realistic, which is honestly perfect for what we're going for, as the late 90s and early 2000s was kind of that bridge for like synths making their way into hip-hop rather than like samples or live instruments. As well as that, some other good plugins that you can use are going to be Purity, Nexus, Expand, just any kind of synth plugin with semi-organic sounds. You don't want anything too hyper-realistic. So now that we've covered which VSTs you should be using for the melody, let's go over the actual chord progression itself. And through analyzing Dark Thoughts by Lil Tecca, I was able to deduce that it's playing a 1 to 4 chord progression in C# minor. Now, for this tutorial, I made another beat very similar to Dark Thoughts, just to showcase the music theory. So instead of being in C# minor like Dark Thoughts, we are in B minor. And as you can see, a chord progression going from the 1 to the 4 is playing 2 minor chords. This on its own sounds like a bit of a dark vibe since it's only playing minor chords, but when put in tandem with the melody layers that we're going to be covering later, like E-pianos or synth leads, it gives it a much more like bright and smooth context. So with that being said, with your chord progression, you're going to want to be playing staccato notes, which are notes that are very short in duration, and you want them to be playing a very bouncy pattern. And with these beats, you want them to be anywhere from like 95 to 105 BPM. So if you have a BPM like this, you could have a chord rhythm going like this. Da 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 da. And that's the exact rhythm that I'm making use of for this chord progression. Now, one tip that I do have for your chord progressions is that you record them live with a MIDI keyboard. As you can see, the velocity of every single note is all over the place. And as well as that, some notes are longer and shorter than others. This is just going to give your melody a much more human feel and make it less like robotic, so to speak. But if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, stay tuned till later, because I'm going to show you a way that you can replicate this quote-unquote humanization. But with that being said, that's going to completely cover the chords to use. So now let's get into the next part of the melody, which is layering. And if we want to stick heavily to Dark Thoughts instrumentation, you're going to want to throw down electric pianos, playing big chords and having a downward strum. As well as that, something that you could throw down is a lower octave piano. Right now, pretty much all the sounds that we have in our melody are playing like mid to high octave ranges. So having something at a lower octave can help fill those lower frequency ranges. And as well as that, something that you could do to make your melody more bouncy is to alter the bounce slightly of this piano melody. So instead of doing the da, 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 I have it going ba, 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 ba. And when played in tandem with our original chords, it provides a really like unorthodox and unexpected bounce. And the final thing that you're going to want in terms of the melody, which is really going to glue it all together, is some kind of catchy synth lead. And one thing I recommend doing with your synth lead is following the ABAC structure. Essentially, all that means is you're splitting your lead up into 4 quadrants. The first 2 bars are one quadrant. The next 2 bars are the next quadrant, the next 2 bars are another quadrant, so on and so forth. And each quadrant is represented by a letter. And as I said, it's an ABAC structure. So quadrant 1 is A, quadrant 2 is B, quadrant 3 is also A, and quadrant 4 is C. Now, what those letters represent is a phrase being played in your lead melody. So in our first quadrant, we have this phrase being played. That is our A phrase. And in the third quadrant, yet again, since it's A, B, A, C, we play the same phrase. In our B section, we play something slightly similar to the A section, but alter it slightly. And in the C section, yet again, we play something slightly similar, but go a bit more crazy than the B section. Having that A acts as like a bit of a repetitiveness and a home bass just so that the listener is familiar with something in the lead, and the B and the C act as a means of variety and introducing something new. So with that being said, a lead making use of this structure would sound something like this. So with all that being said, if you're making use of a bouncy chord progression, making use of staccato notes, layering your melody with things like E pianos and low octave pianos, and throwing down a catchy lead using an ABAC structure, this is what your melody should sound like. Now, you may think that that melody sounds a bit empty, like there's something missing. And you'd be right to think that, as the thing that we're missing in this melody is a bass line. But before we get into that, I want to mention that you can get both the FLP for this beat, as well as the full, raw, unedited video of me making this beat on my Patreon down in the description below. That way, if you wanted to study the mixing, the mastering, the arrangement, the process it takes to make these kind of beats, the melodies, the drums, all that kind of stuff, it's going to be right at your fingertips. So if you're interested in leveling up your production game by studying the process it takes to make beats in the style of hundreds of artists, go ahead and check it out in the description down below. But enough of that. Let's get into the most important part of our melody, which is the bass line. And my biggest tip that I have for crafting your bass line is to play a pattern loosely following the rhythm of your original chord progression. And I say loosely because you don't want it playing on the exact same notes. This is just going to make your melody sound super bland, and there's not going to be a lot of like swing or emphasis on any of the offbeats or downbeats. So playing something that's similar to the bounce, but not exactly that, is going to do wonders for the bounce of your melody. And for this bass line, all I'm doing is playing the root notes of our chord progression while sprinkling in other notes that reside within our scale. Doing this is just going to give your bass line much more variety and make it less stagnant. So now that our melody has a bass line supporting the rhythm of the chords, this is what it sounds like. See, now it's something that you can kind of bop your head to. Your bass line is like the team captain for rhythm in terms of like the team of your melody. If your team captain isn't on the court, your melody isn't going to be the same. So with that being said, now that we've covered the bass line, let's get into the most fun part of making these beats, which is the drums. And in terms of sound selection, you're going to want to try to find like non-standard sounds. Basically just meaning like don't use basic trap kits. And for these drums, I'm primarily using my Surge drum suite. This kit has over 500 completely custom drum sounds, meaning that there are 0 recycled sounds. And they're all split into the 3 subsections of experimental, live, and trap. That way you have drums for literally any kind of beat that you're trying to make. And it includes 808s, claps, crashes, drum fills, drum loops, glitch percussion, hi-hats, hi-hat midis, kicks, perks, risers, snares, and vox. This kit took me the longest time to make, and I use it in a ton of my beats. So if you're interested in having this kind of bag of drums that you can pull into, regardless of the type of beat you're making, go ahead and check it out in the description down below. But y'all didn't order a freaking Yappuccino, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut my mouth and get into the drums. And the first thing I like to throw down for these kind of drums is going to be the kick. And where the bass line loosely follows the rhythm of the chords, our kick is going to loosely follow the rhythm of the bass line, sort of creating like a cascading effect of rhythm, where our main chord progression introduces the bulk of the rhythm, the bass line supports the rhythm of the chords, and the kick supports the rhythm of the bass line. All of these together are going to ensure that we have a super unique and bouncy rhythm throughout our beat. So with that being said, this is the pattern that the kick is playing. The next thing that you're going to throw down is your clap or snare, and you want it to be super layered and dense. So the first thing that I threw down is this clap. It sounds okay on its own, but when mixed with the heavy transient of this rim, it sounds much more full and snappy. And just to demonstrate that, this is what the clap sounds like on its own. And this is what it sounds like with the rim. It just makes the clap seem like a much more important aspect of the beat. And now the final thing that you're gonna wanna throw down for your drums is go back to that like previous one. I said the final thing that you're gonna wanna throw down for your drums is come make an edit with it with like the big font. You know what I'm talking about. And now the final thing that you're going to want to throw down for your drums is some kind of shaker. And for these shakers, yet again, you're going to want to be playing a bounce that adds to the rhythm of the melody rather than something that directly follows it. But you want to make sure you don't really go too crazy with it. Be kind of sparse with your shakers, as if you do too much, it's just going to clash with the rhythm of your melody. As well as that, you're going to want to throw down your shakers on the downbeats of every single bar. This is because we have kicks hitting on the downbeats of every single bar, and the low end properties of the kicks mixed with the high end properties of the shaker is going to result in a super cool, like punchy, layered sound. And I mentioned that I'm going to show you guys how to humanize stuff without using a MIDI keyboard. And I recommend doing this for drum sounds like shakers or hi-hats. So all you're going to do is you're going to select your pattern using Control A, go over to this wrench icon up here, click it, and then go to Humanize towards the right. For percussion, the main things that you're going to want to focus on are start time range and velocity range. Essentially, the start time range is just going to offset your notes from the grid a little bit, and the velocity range is going to randomize your velocity depending on how large the amount is of the range. Doing this is going to make your drums much more bouncy because it's like not perfectly on the grid. I don't really know how to explain it, but just like that non-human, non-robotic sound makes it much more bouncy. And now the final thing that you're going to want to throw down for your drums, especially if you want to stick to the instrumentation of Dark Thoughts, is some kind of vinyl scratch. And I have two different vinyl scratch patterns. I have one like this in the first part of the chorus, and I have a more complex one in the second part of the chorus. So with all of that being said, this is what our drums sound like in their entirety. Now, the last thing that you're going to want to do before exporting your beat is give it that signature Pharrell 4 count in the beginning. So now that we've covered literally everything you need to know on making beats in the style of Dark Thoughts by Lil Tecca, including the VSTs to use, the chord progressions, melody layering, bass line, drums, and that signature Pharrell 4 count, this is what the final product sounds like. So yeah, that's gonna completely wrap up the tutorial. I really hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions at all, throw them in the comments down below and I will do my best to answer them. As well as that, consider checking out my Patreon where I post both the FLPs for all of my beats in all of my videos, as well as the full, raw, unedited cook-up videos of me making the beats. That way, if you want to study the mixing, the mastering, the arrangement, the process it takes to make these kind of beats, the melodies, the drums, all that kind of stuff, it's right at your fingertips. And finally, consider subscribing as I post one tutorial a week and one sound kit a month. Other than that, it's gonna be it. Peace!